Well, I'm deeply honored by your presence, and I have to say either this is a city of readers or there is absolutely nothing to do in this neck of the woods on a Tuesday evening. In either case, what I like to do in these events is talk for about 15 minutes, relatively short presentation, maximizing the time available for discussion. And I think we're going to talk for an hour or so, and then have a little bit of time afterwards for book signing if anybody wants to buy a copy of the book. However, we have to begin with an important decision, and the decision has to do with which talk I should give. And there are two options, and this is a great democratic country, and so we're going to vote, and the majority will decide. So let me describe the two talks. Okay, listen carefully. Everybody has to vote. The first talk they're both about 12, 14 minutes long, so that doesn't affect the decision. The first talk is called Book Talk. And I have given book talk probably 10 times in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I'm basically bored with it, but that should not influence your decision. Book talk is an effort to argue that despite all that has happened since the hardbound version of my book, The Limits of Power, came out, particularly the collapse of the economy and also, of course, the election of our president, the book talk tries to argue that despite all that's happened, the argument in the book itself continues to retain its relevance. So that's book talk. And book talk also features a short dramatic reading, not by me, but by one of you. So that's option A. Option B is something that I wrote about a week ago, and it's called Coming Home from Helmand, referring to the Helmand province in Afghanistan. And it's my fairly brief effort to argue why our new president is treading on very, very dangerous ground in doubling down President Bush's commitment to the war in Afghanistan. All right, so book talk is A, coming home from Helmand is B. All those who would like the talk to be book talk, please raise your hand. All those who favor coming home from Helmand. Okay. That was easy. No. This is the third time in a row I've offered the choice, and the choice has been strongly in favor of the Helmand talk. Now, the first two audiences got the joke, and I was not sure. You haven't got to the joke yet. The first two audiences got the joke, and I was not certain as to whether they would. And I know this is a very sophisticated city and a very sophisticated audience, but I got to tell you that, in a sense, there is a test embedded in the talk. And the test will be whether or not, when I get to the joke, you will get it and therefore laugh. So not to put any pressure on you, but this is a kind of a participatory event. So with that by way of a too lengthy introduction, let me make the formal presentation. History, I not only think this, I know this. History deals rudely with the pretensions of those who presume to determine its course. In an American context, this describes the fate of those falling prey to what we might call the Wilsonian conceit. Yet the damage done by that conceit outlives its perpetrators. From time to time in our history, in a moment of peril or anxiety, a statesman appears on the scene, promising to eliminate tyranny, to ensure the universal triumph of liberty, and to achieve permanent peace. For a moment, the statesman achieves the status of prophet, one who in his own person seemingly embodies the essence of the American purpose. Then reality intrudes, exposing the promises as costly fantasies. The prophet's followers abandon him. Mocked and reviled, he is eventually banished, perhaps to some gated community in Dallas. Yet, however brief his ascendancy, the discredited prophet leaves behind a legacy. Most obvious are the problems created and left unresolved, commitments made and left unfulfilled, debts accrued and left unpaid. Less obvious, but for that reason more important, are the changes in perception. The prophet recasts our image of reality. Long after his departure, remnants of that image linger and retain their capacity to beguile. Consider how the Wilsonian vision, the original Wilsonian vision, of the United States as a crusader state called upon to redeem the world, has periodically resurfaced despite Woodrow Wilson's own manifest failure to make good on that promise. The prophet declaims and then departs. Yet traces of his testimony, however at odds with reality, remain lodged in our consciousness. So it is today with Afghanistan. The conflict that George W. Bush began, then ignored, and finally bequeathed to his successor. Barack Obama has now embraced that conflict as, quote, the war we must win. Bush might rightly view Obama's enthusiasm for pressing on in Afghanistan as a vindication of sorts. Here we have a president, our president, whose run for high office derived its energy from an implicit promise to repudiate all that Bush had wrought, now endorsing the proposition that this remote, landlocked, primitive Central Asian country constitutes a vital U.S. national security interest. The candidate who once derided the notion that the United States is called upon to determine the fate of Iraq now expresses a willingness to expend untold billions, not to mention who knows how many American lives, in order to determine the fate of Afghanistan. Well, what is it about Afghanistan, possessing next to nothing that the United States requires, that justifies such lavish attention? In Washington, this question goes not only unanswered, but unasked. Among Democrats and Republicans alike, Afghanistan's importance is simply assumed. Much the way 50 years ago, otherwise intelligent people simply assumed that the United States had a vital interest in ensuring the preservation of South Vietnam. Yet as then, so too today, the assumption does not stand up to even casual scrutiny. The fight in Afghanistan is essential to keeping America safe, we are told. The events of September 11th, 2001 ostensibly occurred because we ignored Afghanistan. Preventing the recurrence of those events, therefore, requires that we fix Afghanistan. This widely accepted line of reasoning overlooks the primary reason why the 9/11 conspiracy succeeded.